What is going on, y'all? What a freaking night. I think back to when Darth Vader said, "This will be a day long remembered." And obviously, it was short lived in episode 4, New Hope of Star Wars, where the Death Star blew up. Williams-Brice Stadium kind of did blow up last night, though it wasn't in defeat. It was the other way around in South Carolina, picking up a emphatic, glorious, dramatic, crazy. You go on and on. You get the point. A 44-20 win over the number 10 ranked Texas A&M Aggies. What an absolute night. We have got a lot to talk about, don't we? Welcome in to GC Live Sunday Reset with your guest, please, your host, the one, the only, Jack Veltri. Well, Jack, I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, look, last night, all seriousness, last night was crazy, right? Hope you guys are all doing well. Thank you so much for joining me. Running on a few hours of sleep here. I'll kind of recap what my night has been like, because it's been crazy, and I have not had a single drink, so only water and a cold hard Diet Pepsi. Otherwise, we're running on fumes and just positive vibes. What a night. I think you look at this game, and before it even began, you felt like South Carolina had a legit chance to win, and that was just purely because South Carolina has been a good football team this year, right? Like, outside of a few mistakes here and there that kind of cost them in some games, this has been a good football team, right? And they had been so close in some of these games where, you look back at LSU and Alabama, you argue they probably should have won those games. And unfortunately, because of them getting in their own way, South Carolina came up short in both those games. Like LSU, the penalties. I know everyone loves to talk about how the refs screwed over South Carolina, which, okay, I do get it. But at the same time, it's like you had other chances to win that game with a 17-0 lead, and you didn't do so. Then against Alabama, you had the lead in the fourth quarter. That's the common theme. You had the lead in the fourth quarter in both these games, and you managed to lose. And for the Alabama game, it was because of turnovers and things like that. So now with this game, you had your foot on the gas. You blew a lead. It's 20-17 A&M. You tie the game going into the half. We're going to talk more about this all when Wes Mitchell joins me here at 10:30. But you lay your foot down on the hammer in the second half. A 24-0 shutout by the defense, and the offense had a fantastic night. Again, we will be getting into all of this, breaking it down piece by piece, quite literally, in just a little bit. But I mean, what more can you say? I mean, if you're a Gamecock fan today, sorry, I'm like losing my voice, y'all. Like I'll talk about it in a sec, but just what a game! Like, if you're a Gamecock fan today, I'm sure you're waking up very, very happy, and I don't blame you. Like, if you didn't get any sleep last night, like I kind of didn't, kudos to you. That is awesome. Like, I hope everyone partied hard and did safe and responsibly, of course, but had a great time. So, as for me, I probably left Willie B probably around, the whole daylight savings, gaining an hour of sleep kind of threw everything off for me. So, like, it was nice, but at the same time, I was like, probably didn't get home till probably like 2:30 in the morning from eye bags. Holy man, it's not good. I mean, got McDonald's for dinner because I was hungry and I'm not waiting that cookout line, obviously, in 5 points. And then probably stayed up working until about 4 in the morning. Technically 5 if you factor out daylight savings, or the time change or whatever. But then I'm up now and we're here and I'm alive. So I appreciate you guys all joining me. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and give this live stream a thumbs up if you're enjoying it. Please comment away, share any thoughts you have. And you're right, Clemson did throw trash on their own field, and that's not a good look. And that says a lot about a team that was ranked and just lost. Isn't it coincidental that Clemson loses the way they did on the same night, South Carolina storms the field in an upset victory. I know a lot of you like that comment that I had on Twitter about that. That was funny. And it's funny that my brother, he goes to Clemson. My sister does too, and they were both at the game last night. I'm getting texts in my family group chat from my dad, and he's like, "Don't throw stuff on the field. Don't throw stuff on the field. Don't throw trash on the field." I have no idea if he did or my sister did. I doubt it, but I wouldn't be shocked if my brother did. I think that's kind of I'd be pissed watching that game last night if I were a Clemson fan. But and yeah, you're right. Onto their own stadium when the game wasn't even over. But yeah, anyway, went to bed probably around like 4:30 last night. Woke up now and we're ready to roll. Have a great stream. So I really do appreciate you guys joining me. Like seriously, like means the world to me. And it's so great seeing so many of you guys supporting this team and having a great time doing so. And this is what you guys deserve, right? Nights like this when all the stars align for South Carolina, where everything just comes together, and you occasionally get games like this because this fan base has been through, I mean, hell and back, quite honestly. And it's just like anytime y'all are given hope, at least from my point of view, it's never a good thing because things only just go down. And there are moments like Tennessee 2 years ago. I was at the game. Remember storming the field. It was crazy. But nights like last night don't happen too often. And I think it's like only like second time recently they've stormed the field. I can't remember another time. And my good man Mike says mixing a coffee. I don't really drink coffee like that. So maybe I'll go to Starbucks after. Mike, I appreciate you hopping on and joining, man. But hope you're mixing in a water, y'all. But yeah, just again, I'm rambling on here, but you get the point. It was crazy last night. Like, if you don't believe me, here's a quick video, a few actually, of the scene last night at Willie B. So that was one video. Y'all want to see another? The scene of the crime. Holy smokes. Look at all this. Wow. And what's one more? All right, you get the point. I think that's enough. But look, I did not storm the field last night. I went on the field after the game when everything was just they looked like a complete war zone last night. Just crazy. Like that's all you can really say. And South Carolina played a fantastic game. And I'm gonna try to get to all these comments. And again, if you have any questions, I'm gonna save a bunch of these questions towards the end and I'll answer them all then. But right now, R. Zinky says, Jack, how loud was it? I couldn't hear. I was screaming the entire time. You lost your voice in this comment right here. So, hey, hopefully you get your voice back. Here we go. Lost your voice this morning. Yeah, it was crazy last night. Like, I think I said it on Twitter. Probably like one of the loudest atmospheres I've ever seen. The press box was shaking all game long. Normally it just shakes for the beginning of the game, but then it was shaking like crazy throughout the night. And kudos to all the people that attended the game. Like normally in a game like this, if South Carolina's behind, you'll see everyone start to leave. And it sucks to see that, but it's true. Like if you're behind by 2 scores, forget about it. But the fact that South Carolina was in that game all the way through, never really a doubt. I mean, you got what you saw in those videos there. Just absolutely madhouse last night. Crazy. Really great atmosphere. And it's cool to see this team, this program, these fans get that. Because, they've been through so much tough losses this year. And to have an absolute ass whooping last night, quite frankly, sorry to use language there, but true. It was just a really crazy night. And I am too young to remember that because I was born in 2000. USC Light says, you are too young to remember the 2001 and 2001 seasons when we tore down the goalpost against New Mexico State. New Mexico State? What? Okay. Georgia and Alabama. All right, Georgia and Alabama makes sense, but New Mexico State, wow. Yeah, just absolutely crazy. So before we dive into the game itself, I wanted, and we'll have Wes Mitchell on starting at 10:30 to help break this game down as best we can. I want to talk to you guys about our main sponsor of the show and all these GC Live shows, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. If you are, maybe you're like me right now, you're living in an apartment and, well, I'm not looking for a home right now, but say you're looking for to buy a house, or you already have a house and you need help with your mortgage. Well, and you don't know where to start. You don't know what steps to take. Well, luckily for you, the guy right above me, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans, knows what to do. And he will help you through the entire process, step by step. He's been in the mortgage industry for a very long time now, probably about as long as I've been alive, if not longer. And he's a lifelong Gamecock fan. He is a longtime supporter of all these Gamecock Central Live programs, and he knows what he's doing. So you can't ask for much more than that. And the fact that it's one of y'all's own Gamecock fans, you can't go wrong. So if you're interested and you want to get that process started, give Clint a call, 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for him is 71597, or you can go to ClintHammond.com. So appreciate my good man Clint Hammond for sponsoring all of our Gamecock Central Live programs. And like I said before, if you have not already, go ahead, give this video a thumbs up if you guys are enjoying it. Comment away any thoughts, feelings, questions you have. Questions, if you guys have any. I'm starting to go through and save them. I will answer these all at some point, probably at the end, closer in the back half of this show, like I always do. No question gets left unturned. So I will definitely be doing that. We'll be having Wes Mitchell on here in just a second. If you're not already, I don't know why you wouldn't be, but subscribe to our YouTube channel. We definitely appreciate it. Show some support. We'd love to see it. And after a night like last night, it would be much, much appreciated. And yeah, you're right. I mean, sitting in the press box last night was like, okay, so for context, typically the press box is shaking always, especially at night during the first sandstorm. Like right after 2001, when they blare sandstorm, that is the loudest it gets typically. And I don't really remember when South Carolina, like I don't remember really a time where I remember like the press box is shaking in like the third, fourth quarter. Like maybe I'm just not remembering correctly or I'm forgetting something. But like y'all, the press box was shaking the entire game. Like it was nuts. Like every time they played Sandstorm or just some hype up song, the place went bananas. And it was just crazy. Like I really can't say much more than that. And to help me break down every part of this game, because look, I can't do it all on my own, right? This is a team effort. Joining me now, my good man, coworker, the best Gamecock Central has ever had, plus Chris Clark and Shu. Wes Mitchell. What's up, bro? How you doing?
I'm good, man. That was a great introduction.
Yeah. Are you? I see the bags under your eyes. I think we all got them. How much sleep did you get last night?
I mean, thank you, Jack, for pointing that out. But
Well,
it's also
we're
it's like very bright right now too. So the sun is coming right down on top of me right now. So I'm actually I feel good. Like I will say this. I don't feel like we got that extra hour. Like I know we all did, but it does not feel like we did. But
it doesn't.
But I'm very excited that we get to talk about what we saw last night. Like I'm so excited for Gamecock fans and just so excited personally, just from a standpoint of all of you being happy this week, as opposed to talking about the alternative. I'm just very pumped about that part.
Yeah, literally. It's so refreshing to see South Carolina pick up the win they did last night. In case you missed it last night, 44-20 win over number 10 Texas A&M. And like we said at the beginning of the show, They had these chances to come through in the big moments. LSU, they had the 17-0 lead. They even had the lead in the fourth quarter when LSU started clicking, and they couldn't finish that game off. Penalties, mistakes, all that stuff. Against Alabama, you had a lead in the fourth quarter, a chance to really cement your status and get that big win you've been needing. You couldn't do so. And they finally get it this week. Just you were there last night, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you just describe? People were asking me about how loud it was last night. The press box was shaking the entire game. How loud was it being in the stands last night?
Oh, dude, it was insane. Like I'm not gonna be a prisoner of the moment and be like, oh, it's the loudest I've ever heard it. But it was definitely up there with the loudest I've ever heard it. And I ended up watching the game with Chris. Our seats were near each other, so we ended up just sitting together. And we were just talking early on, like, all right, can Carolina, typically when they've had these big home wins, these night SEC games that they've been so good in under Beamer, a lot of times it's been because something good has happened earlier. You've been able to just keep that crowd kind of electrified and in the game. And obviously that was the case last night. I just think, going back to kind of what you were talking about there, Jack, if you're going to beat a team like this, like you're not just going to come out and steamroll them, often at all. So even when you get off to that really great lead, that great start to the game, I should say, and you have all the momentum in your favor, A&M is too talented to just lay down. And that's a team that A&M has started slow a lot of times this season. You go back to last week against LSU, they really did not play well in the first half of that game, but they have found a way to get back in the games. And then, actually ended up, it wasn't even that close at the end of the LSU game. So they've done a great job of making adjustments and coming back when they're down early. So A&M didn't panic. And so I think for Carolina, the most impressive thing is this was not a game that you just sort of rode the momentum to the end. Like, you had to still deal with adversity. A&M comes back. They take the lead on you right at the end of that first half. You go down. You get that field goal. I just feel like to get that field goal at the end of the half, you kind of got a chance to just reset. And I know, I listened to Beamer's press conference, and to me, it's like, all right, you can sit there and be like, well, there was you had a 14-0 lead, 14-3 lead, you had a fumble. You can choose to focus on all that, or you can choose to focus on, all right, you're tied at home with the number 10 team in the country at your place. Just go win the game. And that's what they did. The 10 points in the third quarter to sort of answer right back and get back in a position where A&M is chasing you was massive. I know we're going to talk about more details in the game and some different areas of why that happened, but just from a big picture standpoint, for them to just kind of weather that storm and just keep doing what they were doing, A&M's been very good at making adjustments. But this week, this game, it was South Carolina that thoroughly beat them in the second half.
Yeah, look, just an absolutely, I mean, I'll say dominant second half because you shut out A&M 24-0. Look, this was a game, right? Like, South Carolina, like you alluded to, Wes, had the big lead, 14-0, and then A&M storms back. It's a 17-6 game. There's a 20-17 game, and it's like, oh no, here we go again. But credit South Carolina, credit whatever they did during halftime. Everything just worked, and they went on to, like I said, go on a 24-0 run in that second half. And I want to start with we'll talk about all aspects of this game. How about this offense, man? Like, everyone that I've seen has been giving Dow Loggins a lot of not really, like, a lot of talk. Like, everyone's kind of just been on him
A
about the
lot of
way he
grief.
can yes, a lot of crap, honestly, is the best way to put it. And I get it. Like, this offense has been a little up and down at times, but I think they've been a lot better lately. Like, we saw good things against Alabama. They didn't do anything egregious against Oklahoma. And then they have a night to remember last night where they just absolutely dominate. They had 530 total yards of offense last night. That it felt like, did it not feel a lot like the Tennessee game where South Carolina is just doing anything they wanted in the game?
Yeah, and I think in a big picture way, yeah, in a how they actually did it, it was kind of, Tennessee with Spencer's throwing all over them. This was more, hey, we're going to out physical you. we have the better quarterback, and this was for Carolina. I think, hey, we got the better running back in this game. And I thought you can look at this game, man, and this really applies, in my opinion, to offense and defense, even though we're talking about offense. A&M came into this game as probably the most physical team you've played to this point if you're South Carolina. And I thought they not only matched that physicality, but then actually kind of out-physicaled A&M. Beamer talked about coming into the game how, I don't know if he said this Tuesday, but he talked about it after that coming into the game. They thought a big focus was tackling on defense. And, I thought South Carolina was the better tackling team, but was also the team on offense that was creating missed tackles. I mean, look at what Lenoris Sellers did the times A&M had free rushes at the quarterback. And, you can point fingers at the offensive line on those things, Jack, but at the same time, this is an A&M bunch that is very good at devising ways to get their rushers free. And Elko, he's one of the best in the country at just scheming things up on defense. So they're going to get to your quarterback a few times. But Sellers was, somebody said he was Houdini on here. I mean,
yeah,
that's the way to describe it, man. Like, they could not tackle him. Like, that was today when A&M watches the film on defense of this thing, that is not going to be a pretty sight. And it was because of 16. Like, give Sellers all the credit. Like, he's making a very good defense miss him sometimes with quickness, sometimes with physicality. Just they hit him and he just bounces off. Yeah, we got a lot of things to get to, Jack. It's all kind of bounced around.
It's okay. It's okay.
So first things first, let's go back to the physicality. Your offensive line that has been, people will kind of almost half compliment them if they they're better than last year, but
yeah.
And so you look at the way they ran the football. This was not a fluke like rushing type game. Like this was sometimes the numbers get skewed. They did have some long runs. Sometimes the numbers get skewed though. Like you'll have one long run, a team will, and then it just looks like they ran the ball better than they did. They had those 4, 5, 6, 7, 9-yard runs mixed in. And then they also had those big explosive runs as well from Rocket, a couple of them from Lenoris, obviously, as well. And so I don't know, man. Like, I don't know on paper if you could have expected South Carolina to just run the football the way they did in this game. And this is kind of what we all thought this offense might be at the beginning of the season if they could be what they wanted to be, if that makes sense. Like, this was kind of the idea of this offense, but at its height, like at its best. And so I think when you look at the two sides and you look at South Carolina on 3rd and short or 4th and short, and then you compare that to A&M, 4th and 1, they get stopped. 4th and 1, they get stopped. A 3rd and 1, they get stopped and punt the ball away just because they're scared they'll get stopped on 4th down again. They kick a long field goal on you on 4th and 2 because they have no, I would say, confidence in their offense to convert those short yardage situations. So that's not what we saw from South Carolina's defense last year by any means. So for them to put an offense out there where the offensive line is creating holes the way they did, and then a defense out there where you're stopping your opponent on short yardage, that's a pretty good recipe for success if you cannot shoot yourself in the foot, and like not turn the ball over much. So we kind of saw the blueprint of this team at its best, I feel like, last night.
No, most definitely. I feel like we'll get into the other phases of the game, but I feel like they really played their best football for the most part in all 3 phases. Yeah, are there some plays probably the defense wants back? Sure. But I think the offense was about as good as it's been all year last night. And then special teams, they didn't do anything. Well, they did. We'll get into that in a second. But I think for the most part, they were really good last night. And you mentioned the offensive line earlier, man. It is hard not to talk about the fact that Lenoris Sellers, I had to go back and look at this just to double check. He was sacked 0 times last night. And look, a lot of that probably has to do with the fact that Sellers is able to really just scramble around and move around the pocket, break out of sacks and stuff. I mean, there were a few times where that was the case last night. but 0 sacks are 0 sacks. Like, if you're just looking at the box score, that's a good night for Sellers in this offensive line. I thought they did a really good job protecting him. I thought the blocking in general was really solid. Like, again, it's no accident that you rush for as many yards as you did. Like, there have been times this year where South Carolina has been able to rush for a ton of yards. And look, the issue all year has been the sacks. Like, you look at the sack numbers, they aren't pretty. Like, they're probably going to end up giving up more sacks than they did last year. And when people initially look at that, they're going to point fingers at the offensive line and Lonnie Teasley and all these guys. But I think last night was a real indication of, like, they went up against this defensive line that we heard about all week for A&M that's really good and no one's been able to stop them, this and that. South Carolina with, I mean, if you want to call it what it is, I mean, their offensive line has been great this year, the blocking especially. South Carolina went out there and worked A&M. And I think that's a real credit to the work this team puts in. And last night was just a really good performance. Then you see the blocking from the receivers. Like, go back and look at that first touchdown South Carolina had on the Lenoris Sellers 23-yard run. The hole that was created was ginormous. Like, the offensive line blocked well. The tight ends, receivers, all blocked extremely well in that play. And that was just one of a few times where the blocking was just crisp, perfect. It can't get any better than last night, right?
Yeah, and I think against an opponent that is really, really good is a part of it that most stands out to me. Sometimes in football, we get caught up, and this is like just everybody, like if you love football, we get caught up in well, hey, if you're talking about like your team, you're like, why is my team so consistent or inconsistent at doing this or that? You lose sight of the fact, well, a lot of it is about the matchup of who you're playing. It's not necessarily that your team is inconsistent. It's that, hey, this week you might play a great run defense. The next week you might play a terrible run defense. Well, this was by all indications, a really good run defense. A&M was built on, hey, we're going to run the football and we're going to stop the run. And, I don't know if you can overstate how impressive it is that South Carolina essentially out A&M to A&M. Like, they beat them at their own game. And, like, I think that's impressive, man. And I feel like South Carolina did. They leaned in on continuity on this offensive line as opposed to just saying, hey, some things haven't necessarily gone quite the way we thought they would this year up front. Let's start making wholesale changes on the O-line. I know some fans, and I get it. Some fans might say, hey, try this different guy. Try that guy on the offensive line. And maybe you have a case, but they've said, look, last year, remember, what was it like going into the Jacksonville State game? It was like they started a different O-line like every game last year.
No continuity.
This year, they've said, look, these are our 5. Better, worse, indifferent, everything in between. We're going to let our 5 go play together. And for the most part, other than a guy being dinged up here or there, or Trayvon Ball getting in there a couple of times along the way, for the most part, when they've been in the like normal parts of the games, non-blowout parts, they've said, this is our 5 guys. And I think you started to see it kind of all come together last night. And also, I think we saw Rocket Sanders at pretty close to 100%. To me, and they talked about this on the broadcast a little bit, and I hate to speculate on injuries, but it seemed like that was something coming from their discussions with the staff this week. Clearly, I think Rocket was playing, but not quite back to himself the last few weeks. And I would even say Lenoris, to me, looked a half step quicker than he had coming off the injury as well. Like, I wasn't watching Sellers the last few weeks and going, oh, Sellers still looks hurt by any means. But just watching him last night, both those guys looked fresh coming off the bye week. And so I think that played a part. Like, those little runs that maybe 2 weeks ago, they don't break that tackle. Last night, they break that tackle, and then you sprint forward for that additional. How important are those kind of hidden 7-8 yards here or there? I mean, Josh Simon, who's somebody else we got to talk about, man. Josh had an outstanding night on offense. The touchdown that sort of just put the game completely away. A&M has a shot at him to get him on the ground for like what, 5-6 yards, just a normal gain. He runs through that tackle and then he puts the game away. Those are the little things that sort of can be the difference in a football game. And I thought Carolina, for the most part, did the little things right. Like you said, dude, you can nitpick any game. Is that if you're playing a good opponent, it's not going to just be perfect throughout the game. Like they're going to get theirs, you're going to get yours. But Carolina got theirs more than A&M did. They were more physical than A&M. They did the little things. They did not have near as many key penalties as A&M. Hey, go back and look. This didn't click with me when it happened live, but I rewatched the game early this morning. The field goal at the end of the first half, was much more about A&M just not being a team that was focused on the little things. Like they shot themselves in the foot, let Carolina. There were 2 huge A&M penalties on that drive that put South Carolina in a position to get that field goal. They had the roughing the passer where they hit Lenoris low, and it was either a PI or a defensive hold on a throw to Josh Brown. Or Jared Brown. Both those things put South Carolina in position to get that field goal. I bring that up because we've talked about South Carolina and penalties and those issues this year. These were 2 of the most penalized teams in the SEC coming in. Carolina did not have the penalties that hurt you. A&M did.
Yeah, and that was – look, the penalties last night, it just felt like A&M was – I'm not going to say lack of discipline, but, I mean, look, 7 penalties for 68 yards. It may not seem like a lot, but it was because they're happening, especially on defense. It felt like just all the time these penalties were happening, and it's kind of costing them to where I think there was – trying to remember the moment. I haven't been able to rewatch the game yet, but there was one drive where I think Sellers had just fumbled and A&M recovered, and it would have been A&M ball, but there was like an offsides or a holding penalty or something.
There was a defensive hold in the secondary.
Yes. So it extended the drive, and pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong if you remember, but didn't it lead to points? Like I'm trying to remember.
Dude, that might have been the field goal drive.
I think that was the field goal. I'm about to. Oh my God! You know what?
There were 2 or 3 major penalties on that field goal drive.
Dude, it was the play right before the field goal. Talk about huge.
So Carolina has no timeouts at that point, so they say, all right, we're going to go ahead and kick the field goal here because that put them in field goal range.
Yeah.
So and that, I don't know, man, sitting in the stands last night, like you could just feel there was a little letdown after A&M goes up, and then just listen to the people around me going into the half. That field goal just kind of changed the vibe, and it was like, okay, yes, Carolina had a lead. Yes, A&M fought back, but it's tied.
Yeah,
go win the half. Like that field goal just felt huge to me. And A&M, you got to look in the mirror and be like, hey, we gave them an opportunity to get those 3 points.
Yeah. Real quick, let me ask you about Rocket, and then I want to dive into, because you mentioned Herrera and stuff. I want to talk about his performance in the special teams last night. Rocket, I mean, the comment right here, can't wait for Rocket to be co-SEC player of the week. It wouldn't shock me. Hey, but here's the thing, though. Maybe he splits co-SEC player with Lenoris or Josh Simon, right?
I was about to say Lenoris and Josh.
Yeah, like it wouldn't shock me. But Rocket last night, and look, you mentioned it earlier. I think Rocket was actually asked about it last night. Maybe he has been banged up lately, and I'm not going to assume that's the case, but like he hadn't been what you signed up for, essentially. Like he had the nice game against LSU. I think he had a good game against Old Dominion, but like other than that, and obviously also Kentucky, but like other than that, it hadn't been like these 100-yard games where he was doing all this stuff at Arkansas that you would hope translated over, and you were just waiting to see it. And then last night just goes off. 20 carries, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 92 receiving, so 236 on the night. I mean, he was electric last night. And if South Carolina wanted any chance to win this game, look, it was going to be hard to develop a run game against this type of defense that they were facing with A&M. But, again, it goes back to the holes that were created by this offensive line. He had good blocking, and and Sanders was also able to cut around and make short runs into big runs. What did you make of his performance just overall last night from what you watched?
Yeah, I mean, you said most of it. Like, first of all, he ran hard, man. Like I felt like there's little indications as this game went along that South Carolina, I don't want to say they wanted it more, but it did just feel like um, they were just playing extremely hard on both sides of the ball. And like I said, I thought Rocket just looked a step quicker, a step sharper than he has. I mean, he was coming off of that ankle injury the last few weeks and he was playing, but you kind of look back and you're like, all right, everybody at some point in the season is going to be playing through some things.
Yeah.
And so you kind of get the feeling maybe he just was not quite 100%. Last night, he looked as close to 100% as we have seen him. I thought the same with Lenoris. And just the tackle breaking ability, the physicality, bringing the physicality to A&M and sort of making them almost feel him like throughout the night. Like I think those things add up over time. And give credit, I think, to the offensive line, because if you're going to be a successful rushing attack, it's got to work both ways. Like you've got to have the O-line giving him some room, but then you've got to have that back that is going to create some missed tackles as well. You're not going to just knock an A&M backwards off the ball 5 yards every time. Like that's just not going to happen. So you have to have both sides working sort of cohesively together to make it happen. I thought, Jack, that the ability just to give him a little bit more of a crease. Like he's such a big back and he can run, obviously. Like he's fast for his size, but you have to give him a little room to operate to where he can get that head of steam. But once he does, that's when he really makes his money, I feel like. So just those little, hey, this is blocked up for a 2-yard run as opposed to a 0-yard run. Let's let Rocket do the rest. I thought that was on full display. A few scheme changes, it looked like a little bit more pin and pull on top of the normal inside zone stuff that they run. I'm not saying they haven't done that at any point this year. I'm sure they maybe have, but it felt like there was a little bit more of that just to mix things up on A&M, just to keep them guessing a little bit. And it was fun to see. And obviously, man, he's one of those guys. And you sit in the press conferences. He's one of those guys you pull for. Like he
Absolutely.
like he's been through a lot just in terms of the injuries and has come in. He's been a great leader. Kind of reminds me of like Kyle Kennard and Demetrius Knight on the defensive side. Like these are veteran guys that, they're getting to the end of their college careers. They're trying to put on that tape where they can kind of take that next step to the NFL, but they also have just bought into the culture at South Carolina and to the team concept as well. So I think you have to sit there and just be happy for Rocket that he looked like he did last night, and happy for this entire offense that they were able to give him that room. And hey, real quick, the passing game to Rocket as well. I thought Lenoris made some fantastic decisions when he would make that initial guy miss. Maybe there's not an open guy down the field. Let me just drop the ball off to 5 in space and let's let him go work. If you go back and look at all of his Arkansas film, there's a ton of plays of Rocket in the passing game. There's a ton of plays of Rocket just obliterating defensive backs. So if you get him the ball out there on the edge in the passing game, now he's dealing with kids who are 30 pounds, 40 pounds less than him. So I thought just that combination, him in the passing game, Lenoris getting him the ball in the passing game, and A&M plays a ton of that. Just they try to be a physical lockdown man coverage team. And if you don't have elite wide receivers, then to me, you find your mismatches against teams like that with your tight ends and your running backs. And South Carolina, you look at the box score, you look at the game on Saturday, Josh Simon, Rocket Sanders in the passing game, both making big plays.
Yeah, and I really liked what you said there about Rocket and Lenoris being able to just dump off to him and turn a short catch into a nice play because of how big and physical he is. That is the really nice thing about this offense, man, is they don't have a superstar receiver. Not yet, at least. We'll see what happens with Hopefully Mazio Bennett's all right, by the way. Hopefully he's okay. But the point is, they don't have like that Xavier Legette, Debo Samuel type of guy out there, receiver. But they have some good guys out there. And then obviously at running back with Sanders, and then you have Sellers and Attaway, those guys. I really like what they're doing with the deception. Like, right? Like you don't know if you're A&M's defense, you don't know if Sellers is going to, like, the option, for instance. Like, you don't know if he's going to pull it. You don't know if he's going to throw. You don't know if he's going to pitch it. Like, I think it's a really good thing what they got going on right now with Sellers at quarterback. Like, things that they just weren't able to ever really do. No disrespect to Spencer Rattler was great, but he was never really able to do the things that Sellers was able to do. And the fact that there were so many times in that game where Rocket just caught a pass and took it upfield and made a big play. I mean, it was outstanding last night and a really good performance for Rocket. Cannot say anything more about it. He came into the press conference last night with, I think it was his son. It was, or maybe I apologize, it was his kid. But really, really down to earth guy. Like, this is the type of guy you like to root for, like kind of like Wes said. One other thing with this offense, how about, and Michael brings it up, how about Sellers running over that one dude? Like, that was wild.
That's and you could kind of see it coming because 20 just put his heels in the ground and he did not initiate the contact.
No.
16 Sellers initiated the and I think, I mean, we've seen Sellers and I've had a huge problem, man, with people like when Sellers has slid before he should. Like, you look back, but people are like, oh, they're like blaming Sellers, basically thinking he's doing that because he's not physical. Really, it's just a matter of there's a lot going on when you're a young quarterback, and you've got to kind of know where you are on the field. But it's not because of a lack of physicality from Lenoris Sellers. Like, this guy stole people's souls in high school on a game-to-game basis and was an extremely physical runner. He's trying to go through with a million other things going on, being taught, hey, when do I get down and when do I try to run a guy over? And that's a lot to process for a young quarterback. And so that was one of those times, especially after you slid a little bit earlier on in the game, where you love to see your quarterback just say, I'm running this guy over, and there's nothing this guy can do about it. And can you imagine how much your offensive line and your running backs and really just all your teammates kind of feed off of that when that happens? Because it's right at the first down marker. So it completely changes what you can do next as an offense. The crowd built off of that as well. So that was one of those moments where you see a quarterback like, yes, sometimes you want your QB to get down. Sometimes you want them to go, I like the still his soul phrasing. And that's exactly what he did. So that was just a matter of doing the small things right in terms of making that decision to go do that. And I don't know, man, it was Saturday night was a lot of South Carolina doing things right is a good way to sum it up. And I know we talked about him briefly, but I don't want to get too far over to the defensive side without once again pointing out Dow Loggins had a really good plan for this game in terms of putting the guys in a position to succeed.
Yeah, most definitely. Like, again, there's a lot of credit that is due, but I think a lot of it needs to go to Dow. Like, again, the players are the ones on the field executing and doing it, but it's Dow coming up with these plays and being creative. I think that is the big thing that stands out. Creativity, for sure. And they have the right system in place for this offense. And I think we're starting to see – I remember a few weeks ago after leaving the Alabama game, people are saying, like, Sellers, the experiment's over. Like, this guy isn't it. He's not the quarterback of the future. Potential's not there. What are they saying now, right? He played a really good game last night, and this offensive system just really works. Real quick, let's talk about special teams. I'm going to group this all into one question so you can kind of just give a nice long answer and however you want to take it. But I hate to be this guy. Let's bring up the one play that
Jack, you about to be New York.
I'm about to be. You know what though? Someone has to say it because it's like I was mind blown by it last night. And I'm not going to make much out of it, so we'll make it real quick. I can't remember what quarter it was. I think it was first half. Shane Beamer, South Carolina, they just took, I think they were up like 17-6 or 17-3. And
all right, Jack, if we're going to criticize the decision, we got to say exactly when and what the situation was.
But look, South Carolina was up by a lot at that point. And then bringing Kai Kroger out for what looked to be an onside kick, kind of like the Alabama game a little bit. And then it's a pooched kick that goes out of bounds on a drop kick. What did you make of that last night? And obviously it didn't have any impact on the final result, but it was a weird decision at the time, was it not?
Yeah, and I don't think it was an onside kick.
It looked like it at first.
It was a drop kick.
Yeah, drop kick.
But okay, let me just give you the other side of it. So you clearly hated the decision because
I didn't agree. I didn't agree with it. There was no reason to do it at that point in the game because you're already ahead. You already have the momentum. Why give a team like A&M any sign of hope? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get it. But okay, you weren't planning on the thing to go out of bounds. Like
no, definitely not. And that's the unfortunate part about it is that it did go out of bounds, and we wouldn't be talking about it right now if it stayed in bounds. But it's just like
maybe he's kicked the thing 100 times in practice and it's never gone out of bounds. Like so USC Light says probably setting up an onside kick in the future. Yeah. Okay, was it ugly? Did it look bad? Yes, because of the result. Have they not earned in terms of special teams under Shane Beamer, have they not earned a little bit of leeway in that, okay, there was probably some thought to this? Like, it's easy to be like, oh, it went out of bounds. What the hell are you doing? This is stupid. But have they not earned a little bit of, okay, that was not your finest moment, but you've had a lot of very fine moments on special teams?
Definitely. And look, they do deserve the benefit of the doubt because they've executed so well on so many of these plays. But it's not the fact that they did it. It's just the fact of like the timing of it just felt kind of weird. You know what I mean? Like, and honestly, even with the kick, even if the kick stayed in bounds, I mean, I'm trying to like think of like what the scenario would have been. Like, what was we didn't ask Shane about it last night because obviously there's no point in doing so. Maybe that'll get asked later on the teleconference. But I'm just curious, like, what was the thought?
It was a setup. It was a setup.
Yeah.
For something in the future. Yeah. It was if you go back and look at their kickoff coverage, and I know that's something fans probably you're not paying attention to the details of kickoff coverage. They have many different alignments that they get into. Like sometimes they have the sides are completely split on one side of the field, like 5 guys this side, 5 guys this side, kicker in the middle. Sometimes they start all bunched up, and ultimately, of course, they sort of run and spread out. But they've given teams a lot of different looks. If you look at that game last night, for one, a lot of their kicks, and I don't know if this was by design or not, or what, a lot of the regular kicks from Herrera were not going into the end zone like they have for most of the year. So the depth, like generally, typically they've been able to just kick it out of the end zone. For whatever reason, that was not happening. So they were trying to a lot of times do that corner kick and kind of force A&M into a box basically down there. So I don't know if that's just another directional kick they were trying to do, if they're setting up deception for later. But dude, anything Kai Kroger, if they put Kai Kroger in at quarterback, everybody would be like, what are you doing? But I just give that guy and the special teams a little bit of benefit of the doubt.
No, definitely. And I'm glad you brought up Kai because look, I can't even like really fault him for like it happens, right? Like again, it's not the fact that it went out of bounds. Like, yeah, it stinks that it did. But it's not the play that was the issue. It was just the timing just felt a little weird. But Kai last night and this special teams unit, like I thought Kai has been really solid this year for South Carolina. And I feel like he's not, unless I'm missing something, I don't feel like he has really gotten his dues from people in terms of like, yeah, obviously everyone loves the guy and stuff. But I feel like people aren't like looking at this season kind of like obviously 2 years ago was special, but I feel like he's having a great year, to be honest. Like he had 4 punts last night, 3 of them went inside the 20. He almost had one that landed. There was a kick that he had. Again, so much in this game happened last night, but there was a kick that he had that landed probably about the one. And one of the guys running down there had the ball in his hands. And unfortunately, it went in and out and rolled into the end zone for a touchback. But the point is, Kai last night had a great game. I mean, what can you say about the way he's really looked this year? Has he just what's kind of your level of, I guess, excitement, the way you're impressed with the way he's done his job this year?
Yeah, and I think, man, Kai has been so good for so long that he probably does not get the credit he deserves just because the expectation he has set by being so good so early is just impossible to reach almost. But he's actually been better than he was 2 years ago. And last year, I think you look back, he was a little bit dinged up last year throughout the
Yeah.
year. But dude, he's third in the country in punt average with 47.83 yards per punt. Go back to 2022, and he was at 46.1. So a full yard, more than a full yard more per punt this year is Kai. I don't have right in front of me how many have been downed inside the 20, but it's
been a lot.
It's been a ton, dude. He's so good at just putting the ball exactly where he wants. And these are humans. They're going to make mistakes from time to time. Like you're not going to get perfection, but I almost feel like we expect perfection from Kai just because he's the most popular punter in South Carolina history because of all the things he's done in addition to just punting the ball, all those things he gives you. So I don't know, man. I got a feeling too the drop kick like that might have just been setting up a future. Like maybe you're giving these, and I get your point earlier, the timing of it strange. Maybe you're just giving these teams something else that they have to prepare for in practice. Like, oh, here's a drop kick. What might South Carolina be doing off of that? Maybe you don't even have a trick play off of it. Maybe you're just making the other teams think you do. So now they have to use it and they have to spend 5 minutes in practice to be like, hey guys, they may put this drop kick guy out here that's got this weird onside kick. We have to prepare for this. And now they're sitting there trying to spin the ball in practice and kick it the way Kai does. And so, I mean, a good point from Sam there. South Carolina's been really good on kick coverage. But Kai is awesome. Take everything I just said and just sum it up. Kai is awesome.
Totally. He deserves all the praise and stuff, and he's a heck of a quarterback too. Obviously, he can. I really wish he had hit on that one throw to Brady Hunt on the fake field goal against Oklahoma. Like the play was there for a touchdown, but nevertheless, you can't be perfect. Someone who was perfect last night in terms of field goals was Alex Herrera, and I was on with Terry and Tyler from 107.5 The Game yesterday afternoon, doing a little pregame talk, and they asked me about my confidence in Herrera. And honestly, like I think Alex is a great dude. Like I think he's a fine kicker, but when the moment has been there for him to come through with a big kick, especially like late in the game, it just hasn't fully been there, unfortunately. And so, like, you kind of hope in this game, but in the back of your mind, like, this game hopefully doesn't come down to a field goal. And of course, it didn't last night. But I will say there were moments in this game where it's like we mentioned before the kick right before halftime, how big that was. There were some big moments in this game where you needed him to come through, and he did to perfection. Like 3 kicks last night, 2 in the second quarter from 25 and 44, and then 1 in the third quarter from 43. Like he had a heck of a game last night. I mean, just what is that going to do for his confidence? Like, obviously, none of these kicks came in fourth quarter, game on the line, 2 seconds to go. But nevertheless, kicks are kicks, and he needed a night like that last night, did he not?
Oh, he did, and I mean, it's a different game, honestly, without those kicks going through. And you can look at the final score and be like, oh, South Carolina blew them out. But as we know, two of those scores were tacked on at the end with 5-6 minutes left when Carolina, just kind of put the exclamation point on the game. So in terms of every decision after that, the way everything plays out, it's completely different if you are South Carolina playing with a 1-score lead versus, Herrera going out there and putting you in that 2-score lead category multiple times. So I think, he's been, for a guy having to step in the shoes of Mitch Jeter. He's honestly been really solid, man. I got his numbers up now. 13 for 17 this year. That's 76%. That's really, I think, about what you expect from just a solid SEC kicker. And I think it's easy to look at the misses in the big games, but you also got to acknowledge how long both those kicks were too. Like I think you're talking about both of those kicks being right on the fringe of his max. And so this is a guy that if you can get him, like you said, a couple of those were, more than 40, but if you can get him inside a 40-yard kick, I don't have the numbers of like the splits, but he's been really, really good at just hitting what most people would call kind of your makeable field goals this year. Now, Carolina has been clearly spoiled in that they have had guys that have not only been accurate, but have been able to extend out into that 50. I mean, A&M's kicker, dude, holy cow. That guy.
He is good. Randy Bond is legit. That's an NFL kicker eventually right there.
I didn't end up, I almost texted one of my buddies that's that's with an NFL team. And I almost was like, dude, put this kicker on your board, because he hit that 55-yarder like it would have been good from 65. Easy. And so that guy was kind of the example of, okay, this is like what Carolina has had in the past, which is like just massive leg kickers I think for him, when he starts getting into that 46, 47, 50-yard range, that's when he has to kind of try to extend a little bit so the accuracy dips at that point. You look at the Bond kid, he's just doing his normal kick motion, and he just has that much leg. He has it. So kudos to that dude. He was very impressive. But I think the key for Herrera, keep his confidence up, which we saw that last night. It's got to be a confidence builder for him. But also keep him at that kind of 40 and in mark. And he's been really, really good in those situations. So yeah, kudos to him, man. It's not easy by any means. And we've just all been spoiled by watching really, really, I would say not just really good, but borderline like great college kickers at South Carolina for the last decade.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about it not being easy, just go back and watch week 3 when College Game Day was here, and the South Carolina student that tried kicking that field goal, a shoe going farther than the ball. Kicking's tough, man. And these guys get a lot of heat, and Alex probably has gotten a lot of it after some of these missed kicks he's had. But you know what? Credit for him. He had a great night last night, as did South Carolina's defense. And that's going to be the last subject we really talk about before we get our final thoughts in here. I mean, is it surprising that they continue just to play the way they do? Like, yeah, they get up 20 points in the first half. Some of the plays you get up, not ideal, like the long touchdown run right after the kick that went out of bounds. I mean, that was a big play in the game. But I thought for the most part, you did a really good job kind of slowing down A&M. And look, the excuse I'm sure is going to be, oh, well, Le'Veon Moss was hurt in this game and he didn't play. So that was a big reason why A&M didn't do anything on offense, really, with him not out there. Like, yeah, I get that. And hopefully Le'Veon's okay, because that's a great player right there. But I thought for the most part, South Carolina had a really good plan defensively. And the two big plays I want to talk about real quick, the 4th and 1 stops. The one on the first drive of the game for A&M was a huge early momentum swing, should we say? Like, that turned a 7-0 game into a 14-0 game, just like that. And I don't know if it was the right decision by Mike Elko and company to go for it on 4th and down, not once but twice in your own territory around like that 30 to 35 yard line for A&M. it's one thing if it's closer to the 5th year into South Carolina territory, but you're kind of running the risk of like, yeah, it's 1 yard, you should be able to get it, but it's not as easy as that. Like there are times where you'll get it in most cases, but there are times where you're going to get stuffed at the line, especially against this South Carolina defense that we've seen them make a goal line stop at the 1 against LSU. So anything is really on the table and possible. But I mean, those plays last night, and credit to Debo Williams and those guys for flying in there and making those plays to really slow down A&M and Marcel Reed. Just a really huge thing to see that this team can get stops just about any point in a game.
Yeah, and I think what do we always talk about with this defense, especially what is the national sort of topic around this defense? It's always been about pass rush and, oh, they're so fantastic with their pass rush, which has been true. But, and I wrote about this, my kind of final thoughts going into the game. You have, if you're South Carolina, or you had going into the game, a much different test for this defense. And it was, can you stop a team that is going to just line up and say, we're going to run the football right at you? Clayton White was asked about this in his Wednesday press conference. Like, A&M's not a team that's going to do a turn of hurry up or pre-snap motion shifts, trick you, all these things. They're just going to say, look, we're going to line the football up, old school, run it right at you. And sometimes when you see these elite pass rushers, they don't always enjoy the physicality of a team just running right at you. That's one of the things offensive coaches will do to try to take an elite pass rusher out of a game is run right at him. And for Carolina, they answered the bell, dude. Like this is if you're A&M, you're probably thinking that second 4th and 1, you're thinking, no way they're going to stop us twice. This is who we are. This is what we do. We run the football. And Carolina stops them again. Tack onto that, Jack, Carolina stopped them on a 3rd and short later on in the game. There's a 3rd and 1.
That's right.
They hit him for a loss, and A&M at that point sort of has to they ended up punting instead of going for that 4th and 1 because of what had happened the first two.
That's right. You don't want to run the risk of doing that again and not being successful. And it kind of just like, I got to imagine, not to cut you off, Wes, but I kind of imagine how much of a mental thing that is of like it's self-conscious that like, hey, like this defense has stopped us twice on 4th and 1. They can surely do it again. And I understand the risk of not, I understand why they didn't go for it again on that play that you're talking about, Wes, but it's just like, I think it's such a mental thing of like, it's a hurdle to cross. It's like, they've already stopped us twice on 4th and 1. How are we going to pick up 1 yard? And it sounds so simple. Push the ball over the middle. I don't know how the Eagles did it so well for so long with was it the Philly special or whatever it is?
Tush push.
Tush push. That's correct. Thank you, Wes. What would I do without you? But the point is, like South Carolina just, I don't know how they do it, man. They just are so good at getting the stops when you need them to most.
Yeah, and they for one, man, they got like low man wins on those short yardage. Like Carolina's defensive line, go back and look at how low, like they got up under the A&M O-line, and that allows those linebackers who were so good in this game to just flow to the football. And, you know, I think those plays stand out, but also just the way South Carolina stopped the run for most of the night. Like, yeah, you know, they had the one long bust. Like that's going to happen against a team like A&M. But for the most part, to me, the difference in this South Carolina defense from year to year, other than the obvious, which is like the edge guys, is how quickly these linebackers close holes. Like I was watching the game from an end zone, so I kind of had that like almost like if you're playing the video game, like that quarterback view where you can kind of see the plays from behind. And there were multiple occasions where the initial block by A&M, you're like, oh, A&M has a hole here. And those are plays, I think, frankly, in the past, you would see South Carolina's linebackers not be able to get there and close those down. And that's when you see, you know, a successful run. Well, how many times did A&M kind of have that initial push, but you just look, and whether it's Debo, Bam, Demetrius Knight, who is playing himself into being a higher and higher draft pick every time he runs on the field. I feel like just closing down those holes in the running game was so impressive, man. Like the athleticism, the speed that they have upgraded at that linebacker position is firmly on display for South Carolina. And so I think just kind of letting your athleticism and speed show through even against a physical team like A&M who kind of wants to take that out of the game was just very impressive to me. And then at the very end, like you saw Carolina not able to get a sack the entire game, you finally put them in that situation at the end where they basically know they have to throw the football, and that's when you just close it out by finally getting to Reed and even put A&M in a situation where, even though I'm trying to find the exact moment, it was fourth and 21, Jack, with 5 minutes to go in the game, and you're down 10. Like, they put them so far behind the sticks that they were more comfortable punting the ball back to you in a 2-score game with 5 minutes to, like, that's almost automatic. Like, it can be 4th and 50, and you almost have to go for it down 2 scores with 5 minutes to go in the game. And they felt like they had no shot to get it. And I do think Elko, Jack, you saw a little bit of that sort of defensive-minded coach show in that after the first 2 4th and 1 stops, he didn't double down. Even though the analytics, I'm sure, probably told you you're down in the game. Yes, you've been stopped before. You need to stay on the field. The analytics, I'm sure, said go on that other 4th and 1, but they punted. The 4th and 21, I know your chances of getting a 4th and 21 are like minuscule, but what are your chances giving the ball back to a team that's run the ball on you all night long with 5 minutes to go? So, I don't know. That's a rock and a hard place. But even, the long field goal, I think that was a 4th and 2 to start the game. A&M's first field goal of the game when they sort of broke the ice. 4th and 2. They choose a 52-yard field goal, which they hit, over going for it on 4th and 2. The analytics, I promise you, would have said go for it. 4th and 2.
I was surprised they didn't go for it there. You
saw a little bit of the defensive-minded coach shine through there. Yeah. Like, these defensive guys, ultimately, now he's leaned into the analytics a little bit. We saw the 4th and 1s where he went for it. They backfired on him. But I thought we saw a little bit of that, and maybe even a little, like, I don't want to say, I'm trying to figure out how to say it, Jack. A little bit of the, like, all right, we're A&M, they're South Carolina. Let's just put some points on the board here. If we weather the storm, we're not going to panic. We're just going to go win the game and do what we do. And when they scored at the end of the half, maybe they're right. But I think ultimately we saw South Carolina just be the aggressor in this game and go win it.
No, definitely. And look, let's give credit to A&M because, look, obviously last night was not the type of game they probably wanted. But A&M is still a very good team, and they still have everything they want out in front of them. Like, that game in College Station against Texas to close out the regular season, that's going to be like college game day. They probably should go there. Like, already booked the trip. Just do it. That's going to be for a playoff game. And I honestly forgot. I'm like looking. I'm like, oh, A&M's fine. They only have one loss. I forgot they lost to Notre Dame as well. So they're kind of in a situation where they can't lose another game here. And they'll probably miss the playoff if that's the case, I would imagine. I'm not sure. But look, Elko's a good coach. Like, he's won at Duke. He's winning here at A&M. Obviously, it's not the result they wanted. But look, A&M is going to be fine, I think. And here, a good question here. Does A&M recover from this? Keep in mind, Wes, A&M, not to get too far off topic, we'll talk one more thing about the defense, and then we'll shift into final thoughts. But A&M's got to go to Auburn still. And they have an easy game against a cupcake coming up, and then Texas at home. But, like, what do you see for A&M the rest of the year? Do you think they end up making the playoff? Because keep in mind, even in the modern era of BCS, playoff 4-team. They've never been able to get there.
Yeah, so I know you haven't had a chance to rewatch yet, but at the end of the game, and this sort of reinforced that kind of, hey, if you're a playoff team, you don't want to come to Williams-Brice Stadium at night in November. And before we get too far, the crowd, man, like y'all deserve a lot of credit. Like if you're a Gamecock fan who was there, like major kudos. Like, yes, hats off, round of applause, golf clap. Like y'all were incredible, and it mattered. It really did matter. And so, Jack, they showed a graphic, and basically, and I'm trying to remember exactly the details, but basically A&M came into this game with right around a 50% chance of making the playoff. And if they would have won last night, it jumped to 60 something percent. And if they lost, however, it nosedived. And as of last night, the graphic they were showing said 22% chance. And I just pulled up the ESPN. They have this, it's actually kind of cool, honestly. If you just Google ESPN playoff predictor, you can see the chances for any team. It has nosedived to 19%. So it could have been like, I want to say they said 66% if they won last night. Yeah, Garnet Bird says 22. They were saying 22 on the broadcast, but now I don't know what little details changed between now and then, but 19% on this playoff predictor. So, I mean, a big part of that also is you got Texas left, like you said. So if you basically, this is saying if you lose to Texas, you're out. I think that's how I interpret it.
That's a de facto playoff game, in my opinion. Like Texas has still got to win their games in front of them. Like I know they still have some big games left in their schedule before that game in College Station, but yeah, I mean, and Garnet Yardbird brings it up. I don't know. We're gonna find out, obviously, with the playoff rankings coming out this week, and then the selection show after the conference championship. Kind of what the requirements are. Like, what's the precedent? You know, when it was the 4-team, it was always a 2-loss team doesn't get in. Obviously, until I think Alabama last year had 2 losses and got in, but it's always been that way. And now this year, it's like, does a 3-loss team even get in? Like, what do you need? Is it safe to say a 2-loss team gets in, right? So I think A&M's not done yet, but I feel like they can't lose another game. That's clear as day. Like if they lose to Auburn on the road in a few weeks, that's over for them at that point. And it really, I guess, lessens the hype of a huge game at the end of the year for them against Texas. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But again, A&M, I think they're going to be fine. But again, they got some work to do. All right, Wes, I've kept you on far too long. Final thought.
We hit a lot, man.
We did. And
fun.
again, there's more to talk about. Like you're going live with Chris tomorrow, and then we're both on 107.5 The Game. So there's a lot to talk about this entire week. And obviously, there's another game to look forward to with going to Nashville this weekend, or next weekend, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you storm the field last night? By the way, did you run on the field, or were you like, nah, I'm too cool for that?
No, well, I was actually trying to make sure all our social media stuff was correct. So I was just sitting in the stands making sure we had everything up, everything was good to go on the site. So that's 2 games obviously I've been at that they've stormed, but I didn't get out in the fray. I was just watching it all play out.
Now, let me ask you this, because someone mentioned this to me way at the beginning of the show, and I'm way too young to remember this, but you were probably young at the time too, so I'm sure you probably remember. They stormed the field against New Mexico State. Is that right? Like in 2000, 2001? Like that's
2000.
That's crazy to me.
Well, no, so context is everything.
Yeah, I know, and I know they weren't. South Carolina wasn't good at the time. Like
no, here's they had lost 21 straight games.
That's crazy.
So if you want context of what you're dealing with, if you're South Carolina, like 21 straight losses, guys. So you should brush the field if you beat Dreer High School. If you lost 21 in a row. So that's what that was. They actually stormed the field. They stormed the field 2 weeks in a row because South Carolina beat Georgia, who was top 25. South Carolina's defense had 5 interceptions and beat Georgia next week. So they went from they were 1-10, then they were 0-11, and then beat New Mexico State, and then beat top 10, top 15 Georgia team the next week. Stormed it twice. So that was a long time ago, though, Jack.
I know. That was I wouldn't even remember that. Wes, final thoughts, man. Just your overall impressions of this win, what it can do for the program, and what do you I'm not going to ask you for a record prediction the rest of the year, but I mean, if you're South Carolina, how do you make sure this doesn't have, like, think about it from an A&M standpoint. Like, A&M was coming off the huge win over LSU, and obviously great second half for them, and then they came out here and lost on the road against South Carolina. Gamecocks are in a similar situation where they're going to play a good Vanderbilt team next weekend in Nashville. How do you make sure that you don't have that type of situation? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I know. So we've talked a lot, and you've talked about, you even asked Beamer, I heard you about, hey, you got over the hump this week. You beat a top 25 team when you had a lead, you put them away, et cetera, et cetera. What's the next step for the South Carolina football program? And I think this extends to the fan base too, Jack. Here's the next step. Act like you've been here before. The next step for South Carolina is that beating a top 10 team at your place one day will not even be rush the field worthy. Like, I understand why you rushed the field last night, and it's a special moment for everybody. So on Saturday, maybe Sunday morning, you enjoy that. I think the next step is that, okay, that's what we expected. Now you have to turn the page and not let this linger into the middle of this week. Not let this linger into Vandy. And I don't think that's just a team thing. Like, there is a history here. Some of this is just fans in general. All fans do this. There's a history here, though, of getting far too down on the losses and far too high on the wins. If you're South Carolina, the next step for the entire fandom, organization, everybody involved, is to not stay high off of the A&M win for the next 3 days. It's to turn the page to Vanderbilt, in my opinion. Because the funny thing is about how this season has played out, now that you've gotten over the A&M hump here this past week, 9-3 is not that far-fetched.
It's not.
And I say that as someone who is normally the one going, I want to be clear on this. I'm normally the one going, guys, it's one game. There's a lot of season left to be played. Anything can happen week to week. But when you look at the teams you've played compared to the teams you're about to play, 9-3 is not a crazy thought. Like, it's just not.
It's not.
Because this team, that defensive line travels. Like, and when I say travel, I'm not even literally talking about on the road. I'm talking about you can count on that group consistently winning most of their battles. Even though, I mean, A&M, they kept you at bay. They kept you off their quarterback for much of the night last night. But ultimately, when it became a pass rush situation, we once again saw that defensive line put the exclamation point on that game and hit their quarterback. So to me, you got to stay the course if you're South Carolina, because all of a sudden 9-3 is just sitting right out there in play. And if that happens, then Jack, not only will my positive preseason prediction of 7-5 have been wrong and undershooting, but your 8-4 prediction will have been undershooting them as well. So, I think realistically, you probably just because of how football is, you probably drop one of these along the way. You could definitely see that happening. But again, it's just not a crazy thought. And that's why last night was so big. Because if you're sitting at 4-4, there's still so much pressure on you for South Carolina because you're still going, hey, the season is teetering on 4-4. Now you go to Vandy. There's so much pressure on you. You don't want to be 4-5 after the way you started the year. Now you're just fighting to get to a bowl. Now you're going, hey, special season is in play. Momentum is on your side. So I'm not saying they're going 9-3, but I'm just saying it is in play.
It looks a lot more clear to do that after last night. I mean, look, Vanderbilt's a good team. Let's not sleep on the Doors, man. They're legit. Peso Pavia. Something's cooking there out in Nashville. Missouri, you haven't beaten them since 2018. Regardless of how they've been this year, you can never overlook that team. Wofford, you should win to get the bowl eligibility. And then Clemson. Clemson looks a lot more vulnerable at season's end. That's always gonna be a tough trip up to Death Valley. Wes, I do this with all my guests that come on before I let them get out of here. I know everyone knows you and loves all the work you do. I love the work you do. You're doing an awesome job, man. We appreciate it. But go ahead and just, for people that are listening, where can they find you on socials like X and stuff? And what work you got going on? Anything you want to share? The floor is yours.
Yeah, hopefully the people listening already know this stuff, but obviously GamecockCentral.com. All of our stuff is on at Gamecock Central. My personal stuff is on at Wes Mitchell GC. And I tell you what, Jack, today I already did my rewatch, so I'm going to try to get out my thoughts on the game today. But also, in the meantime, we're going to be getting more recruiting reactions. There's already a great article up from Steve Wiltfong, National On3 guy. He's got some reactions from recruits. But later today, those official visitors will be wrapping up. So a big part of my afternoon is going to be trying to track down some of those guys and get their responses, their reactions to what they saw this weekend. Those will typically start wrapping up at some point in the afternoon. So be talking to those guys, and in the meantime, we'll be trying to put together some of these thoughts we just had. Actually, you just heard a lot of them, but into written form for the site. And then, of course, Jack, you and I will both have teleconference coverage later on. We'll have the audio from that. You'll have some written stuff from that. And, hey, then we all got to turn the page to Vandy, man. That's going to be the key for everyone, I think. If you're a Gamecock fan out there, enjoy it for today, Monday. Got to turn the page, man. It's been a problem here for years, honestly. Carolina beat Alabama and then turned around and lost to Kentucky the next week. So the thing about that big win over number 1 Bama that nobody ever wants to talk about is you lost to Kentucky the very next week.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my, if I have the floor, that's my challenge to South Carolina fans is turn the page to Vandy, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, man. Should be a good time. Wes, really appreciate you, man, for hopping on. I know sleep is not going to happen for either of us for now, but
And that's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Enjoy the rest of your day, man. And thank you again so much for hopping on. Really appreciate it.
All right, Jack. I appreciate you, man.
All right. See you, buddy. That was good friend, coworker, Wes Mitchell, hopping on, joining me. Really appreciate him and his time today. And appreciate you guys all hopping on. It has been really fun. But before I get out of here, and I know this has been running on a while here, let's answer some of these questions as promised. We got a bunch of them to get through, and then we're getting on out of here. And we got a lot going on the rest of the day. So the work does not stop after tonight or this morning, whatever you want to call it. Rob the Builder says, does a win like this impact recruiting more heavily than a close win? Absolutely. You think those recruits are not thrilled after last night? Like, they see it. They want to be a part of it. I saw their reactions on social media. Like, they're hype, and they should be. Like, this is a place to be right now if you're a recruit. And it is an awesome time. Like, the atmosphere last night, electric. That on its own should get recruits in the door. But the fact that you went out there and played a really great game, awesome. Like that really helps. But any win is special, obviously. Frederick says, do you think there will be some welcome homes as a result of last night? Absolutely, for sure. It wouldn't shock me if we hear Shane Beamer on the teleconference later talking about how he's got a couple in the works or whatever the case might be. Like he's got some good news, whatever the case might be. Would not shock me one bit. Rob the Builder says, again, with more parity in the SEC, do we see mid-level programs with better records in the playoffs this year? I don't know. It's possible. What do we mean by mid-level? Do we mean like group of 5 is what I think of mid-level. Boise State, I think, is going to make the playoff this year. I don't think any other group of 5 team makes the playoff. If we're talking about like mid-level in terms of like not usually like a big time program in college football, like Indiana, for instance, I think they're going to make the playoff, even if they lose to Ohio State. That's only one loss. As long as they beat Michigan and Purdue, I think that's the rest of their games they got left because they're 9-0. As long as you win those games, you should be able to make the playoff. Like finish 11-1, you probably end up making the Big Ten championship game, all things considered, because Ohio State, Oregon, unless I don't know, it's a lot to talk about. But anyway, that's the example that comes to mind. Gamecock Ryan says ranking incoming, went out and there's a chance. So for this week, I kind of thought about this last night on my way home. I thought about a lot of things with this game. Is there a chance they get ranked after this game? I thought in the back of my mind, like, sure, why not? I'm talking to a few buddies on the phone because they were calling about the game and stuff. I mentioned it to them. They're like, I don't know yet because I think I think the consensus is they probably need to beat Vanderbilt and then they get ranked because I think they only have like one vote in the AP poll. And the AP poll doesn't mean anything right now. Like college football playoff rankings are coming out on Tuesday. That's a whole nother ball game. So those are the rankings that matter. I don't know. I wonder what the criteria will be for the playoff now. But I think for South Carolina, it probably would be better if they didn't get ranked right now, just because, look, man, like Wes said, the last thing you want is to have this win and to go out and lay an egg next week out in Nashville, which I'm going to be real with you guys. You know me, you know how real I get. Like I'm as truthful as I can be. There is a chance Vanderbilt could pull off a win next week. Like I hate saying that, but it's so true because Vanderbilt is a legitimately good football team. And I would just say right now, do not sleep on Vanderbilt. Like if you're doing that, you got the wrong mindset. This team is going to be well fired up, ready to go. They're coming off a big win over Auburn, obviously. They're bowl eligible now. South Carolina's come off a huge win too. It's just, can they not let a hangover effect happen? Can they not get all the pats in the back and deal with that? All right, you got to just move on from it and get ready for the next game. And Shane Beamer did a great job of that last night. We'll see how they look, though, this week. We'll find out a lot about this team in this Vanderbilt game. It's one thing if they play well in the Vanderbilt game and just get beat, but it's another if you go out there and kind of take A&M, for instance, you don't show up and don't play as well. A&M showed up, but A&M didn't play as well as South Carolina, obviously. Like you don't want that type of performance where you lose by 25 points. What about the non-calls on our DNs? Yeah, look, the holding calls last night that weren't called were kind of, quite frankly, ridiculous. Like Dylan Stewart, guys who come off the edge were held pretty much all night, it felt like, and nothing was being called. Like there were some obvious ones, and it is what it is. Daniel Johnson says, do you think the offense has turned the page? They've been turned the page. Like ever since that Alabama game, they've been playing really well. Oklahoma, I'll give them a pass because they didn't need to do much in that game. And if you're South Carolina and you're Dow Loggins, why would you run all your best plays? Why would you give away your entire playbook essentially in a 21-0 game where you're up 6 minutes into the game thanks to your defense, right? So I give them a pass for that. But the Alabama game was a very good performance. And then obviously this week, 500-something yards, however you want to draw it up, it was a really good night for this offense. And it showed, like, when Dow Loggins is in his bag, y'all love to criticize him and call for him and stuff to get canned. He did his job. Like, again, a lot of credit goes to the players, but a lot of credit needs to go to DL, and he did a great job last night. Hunter Kelly said, will we make the playoffs if we win out? There's a chance. I'm going to be honest. I hate that. The last thing I want to do is give anyone false hope. Like, that's the last thing Gamecock fans need is more false hope. And a little bit of sliver of optimism. And like, yeah, you guys deserve like the best. Like, obviously, like I love chatting it up with you guys and stuff. But like, I don't know what the precedent is going to be if South Carolina is 9-3 and they get left out of the playoff. Like, I think it's going to be more so like I think the precedent will probably be a 3-loss team doesn't get in, and I don't know. I don't think the 3-loss team is getting in. It's just my thought process. I think there's a lot of good 10-2, 11-1. Heck, there's going to probably be some 12-1 teams. Like, there's just a lot of. You're talking about 8 playoff spots because, well, actually 7, because you have the 4 top seeds as the conference champs from the Big 12, Big 10, SEC, and ACC. And then you have the Group of 5 champion, the highest rated Group of 5 team, which Boise State right now, probably going to be them. And then you also have the at-large bids, which are going to go to those 10-2, 11-1 teams. So unless South Carolina gets some help and they finish 9-3, and again, you kind of hope, if you're South Carolina, you kind of hope Vanderbilt is ranked this week. You hope that's the case. So that way, it's like if you go into Nashville and win, maybe as an unranked team, that's a ranked win right there. And we'll see. But then you get Missouri, which Missouri's probably not going to be ranked. And then Wofford's not going to, obviously, Wofford's not. Then Clemson should be ranked, but it's not as impressive as a win if they get that win. It is because they go to Death Valley, but it's not because it's like Clemson is kind of vulnerable. They might end up they keep in mind Clemson, not to get too far off topic, they still have to go to Pitt and Virginia Tech. There's a real chance Clemson, I know Clemson normally is good in these spots where they're resilient and they respond. They'll probably end the year with probably 2 or 3 losses, but there's a chance they drop at least one of these next 2. Like, I think they can go to Blacksburg next week and probably lose. Just my thought process on it. We'll see what happens. But to answer the question, no, I don't think so. But it's like there's a chance, but it would require a lot of help. We'll see what happens. I'm not sure yet. Michael says, any chance we get one of our DBs to return kicks? Those guys seem to have the ability. Oh, I definitely agree. Like, they have a lot of guys with the ability, and I thought they did some good things yesterday on kick returns. But I think, I don't know. I think you kind of just keep rolling with what's working. But it wouldn't shock me if you throw a guy like Jalen Kilgore, someone like that back there. And then Rob the Builder says DQ's kind of been underperforming to this point in this season. No, that's a huge statement for him. Yeah, look, DQ has been playing a lot better as of late. DQ Smith, that is. Had the pass breakup last night. Had the hit on Moss. Look, I think he's done a fine job this year. He gets a lot of flack, obviously, but I think he did a good job last night. And we'll see what happens. And yeah, I mean, look, this is all Gamecock fans could want, right? Just win out and beat Clemson. If you win out, that means you beat Clemson on the road. And look, if I'm Beamer too, I'd be praying South Carolina doesn't get ranked. I don't think they're going to, but we'll have to see. It would just be a significant jump to go from 1 vote to getting ranked inside the top 25. They'd have to leapfrog a lot of teams probably. So we will see what happens, but yeah, this has been a very, very, very long show, like EXO said. It really has. Like, we're going well over 90 minutes here. And, it's been a lot of fun, guys. So many of you guys are tuning in. You know how awesome this is? Like, seriously, not to get super sentimental or anything. I know I'm going to end the show here. But you know how cool this is to get on here and talk to you guys every single week, every Sunday after win, lose, draw. I know we've had some ups and downs, talking here on the show, but like, seriously, like, it's stuff like this that I love getting to do, getting to chat it up with y'all. Y'all are awesome. And you guys really do deserve to have this type of moment. Like, it's super cool getting on here and seeing how happy you guys are. Because look, South Carolina fans, I have not been like I did not grow up a Carolina fan or anything. I went to school here, so I've seen lately in the last 5 years kind of what it's like to, get that experience of how South Carolina fans feel and stuff. But look, it's tough, right? And there's a lot more tough times than good times, I would say. Like, it's like you get through it. You have your good moments, but you also have your low moments. And it's days like this where it's like you can just reflect, be really happy, and celebrate a huge win. At the same time, you just got to hope South Carolina, maybe something changes next week where it's like this team just, for whatever reason, they seem to lose these games after having such a big week. I think back to Tennessee when they beat the Vols 2 years ago, and then they went into Clemson and won a game that no one thought they were going to. It is possible. They just got to go out there and do it, and we'll see what happens. But again, this is a great comment here. I'll leave it kind of off on this. I appreciate all you guys. Like, seriously. I'll be honest, I was about to give up with this team at the half. This year's been brutal. Agreed. It's been a weird year where it's like South Carolina's been playing good football, but at the same time, they're really this close to probably being like a 7-1 team right now. It's at worst 6-2, but they're not because they made mistakes in games that they should have won. And I get it, like things happen, but at the same time, it's like this team they are better than what the record indicates, in my opinion. And if they just if they got out of their own way on some of these things, who knows what happens? We like playoff talk. Y'all talk about playoffs like right now. It's crazy that we're even talking about that, but we'd be having a much more serious conversation about playoffs had this team not kind of lost some of these games that like you beat Alabama on the road. That's a great win. That's probably the best win South Carolina would have had all year, even besides the A&M game. But reality is you had fumbles and you made mistakes in that game. So you didn't win that game. And then the LSU, you had the mistakes with the turnovers and the turnovers and the penalties and stuff. So there's a lot of things that went wrong in those games. But look, man, you showed up when you needed to last night. You did what you had to do, and you got the win. That is all that matters. So I think that's a good way to kind of end the show here. Again, really appreciate you guys all hopping on. If you're not already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. If you're not, subscribe to GamecockCentral.com in general. I hope after watching this, look, I know this is on YouTube, but like and Facebook and Twitter and all that, but I hope you guys go ahead and just subscribe to GamecockCentral.com. Like if you're not already, I'm sure anyone can vouch for me on this. Why would you not want to be a part of this right now, right? Like this is an awesome opportunity to just get in on all the action. We do so much great work on GC with premium coverage and stuff. I know it's cliche to say that we do this and that. We do a great job, but we are like straight up. Like I couldn't be prouder of the work that we do at GC, and everyone's gonna say the same thing about their sites and stuff, but we do a great job too. And for that reason, I mean, why not? Why not come join the team and get in on the action? Have great conversations on the Insiders Forum. Read premium stories, free stories. It's such a good time, and stuff like this is why I love doing it. Getting to hang out with you guys for a bit. So appreciate you guys. That'll do it for right now. Next time I'm back on live will be we got basketball this week, so we'll be doing GC Live at the buzzer. Again, I haven't been able to figure out a solidified time and date for that type of show each week because football takes precedent. But once basketball season is the only thing going on, once we get to December, we'll kind of have a more solidified schedule, I hope. But for right now, we'll be doing at the buzzer probably either on Wednesday or Thursday, and then as always, Kendall Smith and I will be going live Wednesday at some point. And that'll be a lot of fun, and we'll have a lot more to talk about. We'll get going on Vanderbilt. I'll be on 107.5 The Game, 9 to 10 a.m. every day this week, like usual. Should be a lot of fun. And, yeah, we got a lot going on. Beamer Teleconference will be tonight at 5 p.m. I'll have live updates and a story from that. Wes will be posting that to YouTube. And, yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So, Gamecock fans, I appreciate y'all hanging in there with me for almost 100 minutes today. I need sleep. I don't know if I'm going to be getting any. I need food probably too. But seriously, y'all are the best. I appreciate it. I love hanging out with you guys, and y'all are the best, seriously. So have a great rest of your day. Enjoy this win, and let's get ready for what should hopefully be another great week of Gamecock football out in Nashville. Y'all take it easy, and I'll see you guys again soon. Thanks so much.